ये है रोशनी का कारवां।
This podcast is brought to you by Barrier Break Solutions Private Limited and Score Foundation.
ये है रोशनी, रोशनी, रोशनी का कारवां, रोशनी। Eyeway, ये है रोशनी का कारवां।
Hi, I'm George Abraham. Welcome to this edition of Eyeway Conversations. My guest today is Moses Chowdari, a young man from Andhra Pradesh who has made his mark in the area of digital literacy and employment for persons with disability. Welcome, Moses. You grew up in a village in Andhra Pradesh. Yep. So tell me a little bit about your early childhood.
I was born in a farming family in Andhra Pradesh. So when I was 3 months old is when I was taken to polio drops is when the nurse recognized that I have some sort of eye condition by just looking at me. And eventually my parents took me to All India Medical Eye Institute in Delhi, all the way from Andhra Pradesh. And I had to undergo 3 surgeries, George. And then all went in vain. And eventually I lost one eye completely, another just some residual vision that I regained. I have retained in my left eye. The immediate reaction for my family was that, whoa, where do we go now? Because when we talk about vision impairment, even now in many places, beyond going to high hospitals, people don't know how to really move forward if any of their family members have a vision impairment. Then what happened was that I started going to school in nearby my village along with my cousins. So I went to school initially, maybe kindergarten, equivalent to today's kindergarten. I used to recite rhymes and all that was fine. But when the time has come to start writing and when the teacher is, writing on the board is when I started seeing problems because I could not read anything. I'm not able to follow what the teacher was saying. And that's when I think maybe I was in my first standard that time. And my teachers called my parents and said, no, we can no longer accommodate your son in this school because he's not able to follow when the teacher is writing on the blackboard. So that was a devastating moment for my mother because she always wanted me to go to school because she felt even with with my vision condition, low vision, she always thought if I could access to education and I would be fine. So with my grandfather's help, my mother's father, who invested his time about a year to just identifying where the school that a blind person can go to. And George, it took about 1 year. So I had to lose that 1 year in the middle. And eventually we found a school in Vijayawada. So in the school, I learned Braille and then it's still integrated school. So I grew up with visually impaired and sighted children together.
So you did your 10th standard from this blind school, is it? Or you did your 12th standard from there? What did you?
In Andhra, the system is up to 10th standard we do in the school. Then go on to something called intermediate, which is equivalent to 11th and 12th.
So that was the Loyola College.
Yes, that's at Andhra Loyola College. Yeah.
So you did your graduation and post-graduation from the Hyderabad Central University, right?
Yeah, I did graduation in Loyola itself in Andhra, and then moved on to Hyderabad Central University.
So what was your time at HCU like?
There's a story. Though I got state first award in my HEC group in the intermediate, I had to switch to English medium in Loyola College for my graduation. So Judge, I used to actually go to class just along with the professor. So that I don't need to communicate with anybody else because when the teacher comes and lecturer comes, he straight away starts the class. Because I could not communicate anything other than say, hi, how are you? Okay. And from there, to be able to crack seat in the, master's class at Central University of Hyderabad is quite a task because it's an all India entrance exam. And I'm happy to just note that I got through with in the open category without even using my
Disability.
disability as a quota system. So to really work hard, but I think that's good. That's fun because then, by the way, I learned English thanks to cricket commentary, because I like cricket and anyway wanted to follow. So just listening and listening and listening, I think I picked up the language.
Right. Great.
And that's how I learned, and I moved to Central University of Hyderabad.
Right.
There, the challenge was, the first thing is that it's not, when it came to MA, George, it's no longer just studying class books, prescribed books.
Lot of
the more you read,
reference material. Yeah. Okay.
Lot of reference material. You have mammoth library there, but things were, at least I was not aware of any digital, assistive aids and things like that. So there also I depended on my friends to read out. I was always aligning my calendar with them, and I was only in with my friends, and I was taking only the electives that my friends take, because then I can have my friends read for me. So that instance actually made me to think again, how can I become independent in reading and writing, which I had in childhood. Have been carrying that, frustration, but somehow getting through the system. But this instant is a boiling, or the point where I could no longer take it.
So what was the outcome of this frustration and this experience? Did you come up with any solution?
Absolutely. I think that solution actually turned my life into a new direction. So I wanted to, this time, till then I was just frustrated, but may not be doing much about it. But this time I actually called up one of my cousins who used to stay that time in Bangalore, and said, he's a software engineer. I thought, okay, maybe he might know something. He has no disability. I called him up and said, I want to understand how persons with vision impairment pursue their higher education. He said, well, you are pursuing already. MA is part of your higher education. What do you mean? I said, no, I really want to know how people can do things independently. That's when he came to know, he Googled, or what, I don't know what he did, but he came to know that there's something called screen reader, and which I heard, by the way, when I was in Loyola College, but we did not have access to it. Then he said there is an organization by name Enable India in Bangalore who teaches computers for visually impaired. And after my second semester, that means after my first year, during the vacation, I came to Enable India and learned computer. So that instance, I think, made my, really made a difference in my life.
So when you went back to HCU, you kind of acquired a laptop or something, or computer or something?
Yes, yeah. I came to Enable India, learned computers, went back. I think we borrowed a computer from somebody, from a friend, and it's a desktop, and installed, JAWS demo version. I did not even have money to buy a license at that point of time. I used to restart computer every 40 minutes. That time, have the demo version installed, started scanning books, or started accessing web material. So my second year has become much more enjoyable. At least I felt I opted for this papers based on my choice. No longer it's just about my friends' availability. So that actually made me much more happier, and
that would have been very liberating. Yeah,
absolutely. It's the right word is liberating, because I just felt I have conquered the entire world.
If you know of anyone with vision impairment who needs guidance on living life with blindness, please share the Eyeway National Toll-Free Helpline number 1-800-5320-469. The number is 1-800-5320-469.
You have done extensive work in digital literacy over the last few years.
Yep.
So I'd like you to kind of share why you think it's very important. Of course, it's had a great meaning in your personal life. But how is it going to change the landscape of the blind person in India? And what are the challenges that there is in kind of spreading and promoting digital literacy?
Again, a very interesting question. I mean, as I said in my own life, I always say this. I believe computers arise for visually impaired. When I say computers, I also mean a mobile or any other assistive aids for that matter, because I saw in my own life from somebody who had to depend on my friends to read. Today, I take great pride, and I'm married to a person, sighted person. My wife, in general, doesn't like reading, so she tells me, anyway, you're always on that stupid phone. You keep reading all the time, and why don't you tell me what the news is rather than me reading again? So I take great pride in that. So even for that matter, I as a person, I mean, with wife and husband, so I do the bookings, or I do the shopping or whatever little finances that we want to investments, all that I manage by choice. It's not that, I mean, she's not interested in any of those, so I had to take up those things. So I have seen that difference in my own life.
Yes.
And we at Enable India also have seen in the larger community, when people with vision impairment actually gains that digital literacy skills, that opens up opportunities that are otherwise not possible. Let me give an example, right? I mean, anyway, earlier when there was so much of paperwork involved in the offices, the visually impaired were only able to do a telephone operator, or limited to few roles. But now with the more and more offices to start with private sector, and now even in the government, when more and more workplaces are becoming paperless environments, the spectrum of working opportunities have increased. And by the way, today, we at Enable India counted there are about 183 different job roles in which persons with vision impairment are able to work. I mean, it's growing. It's just a count that we had, but I'm sure there are many more opportunities out there. I mean, many more job roles in which persons with vision impairment can actually work.
Yeah, I just come in here. You are right. There are many possibilities of blind and visually impaired people actually working in the corporate world as well as in the government. But, with Skill India coming into being, Mr. Prime Minister's dream project of Skill India, and one of the targets in that was 37 lakh, 3.7 million people with disability would be kind of trained and employed by 2022. I think that was the kind of target in 2014 or 15.
Correct.
But what one has noticed that the focus that most organizations and entities have shifted from blind people to hearing impaired people and physically challenged people and even intellectually challenged people to just get the numbers. And visually impaired people, ironically, are probably most qualified when it comes to education, and they are left in the lurch. So why do you think this is happening, and what is the way forward?
I think that is true. I mean, there are organizations, even in when we go to rural Karnataka, we see organizations even working on, say, intellectual disabilities, which is in itself is a good thing. I mean, I'm glad that they're able to do that. But they say, oh, no, but we can't work with vision impairment. The reason for that, George, is that, if a person with vision impairment have to really become employable, the journey is much longer, because you have to really teach computers, and then talk about skilling or the domain training programs. Without that base of knowing computers, you can teach a domain, but ultimately that person is not independent in using computer, is not very useful. So what is happening in this number game when it comes to people just making sure that they train more and more people? They think, oh, teaching, if we have to work on the development of persons with vision impairment, that take longer, and many more steps to complete. So why do we even take touch them? That's an unfortunate thing. But I think what will change is and I think there is the room for innovation, right? I mean, that's why when you actually asked about the significance of digital literacy, is the thing. For example, if we can introduce digital literacy skills at a young age in the schools, where people with vision impairment can actually read and write using, braille, electronic braille, now to computers using screen readers, and we need to provide all these choices. I'm not saying one is the good, the other is the bad. I mean, based on the choice, I think people can take up the option of the mode in which they want to access study material. But if we can introduce and make visually impaired read and write independently, then they will have a level playing field when it comes to accessing the skilling opportunity. Because skilling is what, I mean, the final maybe lap in the marathon, where people are really getting ready for the work, but who is working on the building them to get there? I think that's the biggest miss here, and that's where George, you have been part of the whole CA Million conversations. You have been a great champion of spreading that awareness about the opportunities and digital literacy. So we need to do that work. I mean, as a community coming together. That's why we have campaigns like CA Million. The collectives are the way forward, where organizations come together, because no longer one organization can make this huge difference, right? So we need people to come together and work on that, creating awareness. So the way forward is to really to do that backward integration, in terms of really making digital literacy skills available for persons with vision impairment, or digital access for visually impaired from their childhood, then right up to education through. Then obviously, yes, if they want to pick up a domain skill towards the end of their academic, then getting into job market is much more easier. So I don't know if I have answered your question, but this is what is running in my head.
Yeah, which means that there is a lot of need for actually reaching out and making sure that digital literacy and skilling when it comes to using digital devices and accessing the world of knowledge needs
Absolutely.
to be made available right at the grassroots level. Because there are, the number of blind people in this country run into millions. So that's a huge number that we're talking about.
Absolutely.
And so that is one side of the story. But what about people who give jobs, the private sector? What has your experience been? Are they open, or is there work that needs to be done with them?
Absolutely. So I think, at least for last 10 years, I have been with Enable. And what I have seen is that increasingly corporate India is becoming aware and coming forward to hire persons with disabilities in general. I'll come to persons with vision impairment in a minute, but in general, persons with disability, people are showing interest in hiring and all that. I'm not saying there is no work to be done there. There's a lot more work to be done, because even now, a lot of companies are still having apprehensions. It's just because they never had exposure to working with persons with disability, and anything new for humankind is always takes time to get used to. But when George, for some reason, when it comes to persons with vision impairment, again, increasingly people are coming forward. But I still say, relatively, when it comes to hiring persons with vision impairment, people still have a lot more questions today. That's the reason I think predominantly I think people visualize this world visually, as in like they think there is so much dependency on vision in this world. When I say vision, eyesight, I mean not the other vision. Eyesight, people think, oh, without eyesight you can't do much. Because of that, I think corporate India also sometimes they say, oh, we are okay to hire persons with physical disability or other disabilities, but we may not be ready for hiring persons with vision impairment. But to be frank, we actually have seen when a company hires severe impairment like vision impairment or intellectual disabilities or multiple disabilities, company becomes much more inclusive, and hiring anybody else becomes much more easier for them. So because the people think there's so much dependence on eyesight, they cannot visualize the other world. They have a lot of times questions about, how the visually impaired can come or do things and all that. That's why, we keep hearing this in the interviews. Even when a person is most qualified, has MBA, people in the interview first they ask is, how have you come here, or how do you eat, or how do you go to restroom, or whatever, all sorts of funny questions, because it's not that they want to say, it's not just about insulting, or
it's not about demeaning. It's basically curiosity and genuine ignorance.
Absolutely, it's a genuine ignorance, and it comes from there. But at least I appreciate that curiosity, because unless people ask, they just assume, right? So that's one of the reasons why we still not seeing the willingness from corporate India to hire persons with vision impairment, even though they are doing for other disabilities.
To support our work with the blind and visually impaired, you can visit the donate page on our website www.scorefoundation.org.in. Please note www.scorefoundation.org.in.
So, in your resume, I was reading that you do a fair bit of work with what you call WPS, which is Workplace Solutions.
Yes.
So, can you tell me what this Workplace Solution is, and can you maybe give with an example?
Absolutely. So, Workplace Solution is nothing but a solution that helps persons with disabilities to do their job, easily. So, I'll give an example of an workplace solution. This is the workplace solution that Enable India has created, in say about 2004 or so. So there's this petrol and gas company who approached, Enable India and said, we want to hire persons with disability. And we all know at petrol pump, many people are required to fill gas. But then they said, okay, can we hire persons with disabilities as a traffic assistants, which is to just clear the traffic and ask people to come in line and things like that. But then Enable India said, but that's not the predominant job in the gas and petrol stations. So then they said, but how do we hire say persons with disabilities to fill the gas, petrol and all that, because if it is visually impaired, they cannot make out they may not be able to read the screen and so on and so forth. But then anyway, so to cut the long story, they said, okay, why don't we hire persons with hearing impairment in this case? So, but they said, the company said, but how can they communicate with customer? And that's when Enable India and the company together have designed a simple wipeable board, which says, says that I'm a person with hearing impairment. Please indicate your choice, whether you want petrol, gas or diesel, how much, and how would you like to pay, with a credit card or cash or whatever. So it's just a tickable options. And of course, it's in vernacular languages as well. So the person carries this board to the driver, and the driver ticks, and a person with hearing impairment does the work. So in this case, the solution, that is a wipeable board, is opened up the job, because that is a solution is enabling that person with hearing impairment to do their work well. So that's what we call as a workplace solution. Of course, I just use this example for the simplicity, to explain this in a simple words. These solutions can range from no tech to low tech to the highly technological. For example, George, today you and I are able to have this conversation using screen reader and on the computer, on the internet, using internet, because of screen reader as a workplace solution. So my team and I actually do this workplace solution. So we go to companies, we kind of identify jobs, we open up jobs by testing the applications which are used in that, say, a role or a process, and see how that is compatible with screen reader. And we kind of then train persons with the vision impairment to be able to do well in that job using the technology or the solution that we propose. Because for low vision, it could range from magnifier to just sometimes it's just about changing the contrast of the screen, or changing the font size, or changing the lighting conditions. So the many aspects of workplace solutions, but in to put it simply, workplace solution is a solution that enables a person to do well in their job.
Yeah. So we will ask you I would ask you the last question of this chat.
Sure.
And using a cricket analogy, you've done a lot of splendid work so far. You are still young. You're just 35, as you said. You've done a lot of work. You've had a lot of experience of living life with a disability. You've found solutions and you're moving ahead. When you finally kind of pull your shutters down, or you declare your innings closed, say at 60, 65 or 70, what is it that you desire to have achieved by then?
I think I wanted to, one thing that I surely want to visualize a world where digital literacy is available to persons with vision impairment. That's my first thing, because as I said in many words in my own life, so I wanted to see that. That means that I want to see visually impaired, reading and writing independently. I want people to write, by the way, their own exams, because I in the scribe system we lose a lot of things, because as I said, that experience of writing is an important employability skill that is required when you have to work in this 21st century. So one thing that I certainly want to see is that next generation of persons with vision impairment read and write independently. That's one thing that I want to see.
Yes.
But in general, George, I want to see more and more leaders who have ability to include people, and that's no longer is a skill. It's just no longer about awareness. It's about having that skill and knowledge and attitude to include people, not just persons with disability, but when you learn to include persons with disability, you become inclusive to many others as well. For example, if you learn how to work with a deaf colleague in communicating in a simple language, whether you know sign language or not, if you can do that, you will also learn to include somebody from rural background who perhaps may not have the equivalent, like somebody like me who had to struggle with my limited English in the beginning. So you could perhaps include somebody with a disadvantage in terms of English language. When you work with visual impairment, when you describe things, you will learn to prioritize. For example, George, I know this happens to all of us when we sit. Sometimes people start describing every little thing in the movie to us, and that actually disturbs, right? Because you need to know when you are watching a movie with a vision impairment how much to describe. That's a lot of decision making, right? In one way. So I like to see people because of inclusion. In general, our country and our world becomes much more leaders who will have much more skill set just because they are able to include persons with disability.
Yeah, actually, when you actually start including and you start creating a workplace or any kind of platform which is inclusive or universal, it becomes easy for all. It's not just about including people with disability, but there is ease of operation for all. It's not just,
absolutely,
and that's something which people haven't realized. And I guess that's something that all of us dream about. It's been a pleasure, Moses, talking to you. And I would like to wish you the very best in your endeavors as you go forward. Take care and all the best.
Thank you, George. It's my pleasure.
This podcast was brought to you by Barrier Break Solutions Private Limited and Score Foundation.
रोशनी का कारवा